Have you ever loved a woman who slowly pulled away, without warning, without explanation? One day she's in your arms, the next she's distant, cold, almost like you never existed. You question everything, your worth, your words, your actions. You replay the last conversation. You wonder if maybe, just maybe, it was your fault. But here's the truth most men never hear. Her silence doesn't define you. Her distance isn't a reflection of your value, and her hurtful actions, they say more about where she is than who you are. This episode isn't about blame. It's about building your emotional backbone. It's about becoming unshakable in the face of heartbreak and mastering the art of not chasing what's already walking away. So if you've been left confused, rejected, or emotionally tested by a woman you once gave your heart to, lean in, because this is where your power begins. Part 1. Her distance is a test, not a sentence. There's a quiet kind of heartbreak that hits differently. It's not the loud goodbye, not the screaming match, not the slammed door. It's when she slowly begins to pull away, when her texts get shorter, her voice less warm, her presence more distant. You don't know exactly when it started, but one day you look at her and realize she's already halfway gone. And in that moment, most men do the same thing. They panic. They try harder, send longer messages, offer more love. They chase what's leaving, thinking more effort will reverse the drift. But the truth is, her distance was never about effort. It was a signal. A moment where the universe asks you a single question. Will you break or will you rise? Stoic wisdom teaches us not to react, but to observe. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." Her silence isn't what breaks you. Your interpretation of it does. Your story about what it means, that's the true source of your suffering. You think, I must have done something wrong. She doesn't love me anymore. I have to fix this before I lose her. But in reality, most women don't pull away because of a single moment. They pull away because they're testing your emotional center, consciously or not. She wants to see, will he collapse if I withdraw? Will he chase me? Will his sense of worth shatter without my attention? And that's where your power is forged. Not when things are easy, but in the tension, in the unknown, in the emotional storm. The man who can remain calm while her energy changes, the man who doesn't react with fear, but responds with grounded stillness, that man becomes unforgettable. Understand this. Women are not looking for perfection, they are looking for presence, for steadiness, for a man who doesn't shift just because they do. Because when a woman's emotions spiral, she needs to feel your anchor, not your anxiety. This is where most men get it wrong. They think love means always proving, always showing up, always being available. But when that energy becomes dependent, when your peace hinges on her attention, you lose polarity, you lose mystery, and ultimately, you lose her respect. There's a law of nature here that can't be broken. What chases, repels. What stands strong, attracts. The sun doesn't beg to be seen, it rises, and the world adjusts. Be like that. Don't shrink to win her back. Don't trade your dignity for attention. Don't sacrifice your silence to soothe her uncertainty. Because here's what you don't realize. Yet, your silence is louder than any text you could send. When you stop reaching, stop chasing, and simply let her go, she feels it. Maybe not right away, but in the quiet hours, in her mind, in her heart, your absence becomes presence. Your detachment becomes power. When you act from fear, you communicate weakness. But when you sit with uncertainty, when you own your space, you communicate strength. Women don't test men to destroy them. They test to find out who's real. And when you pass that test, not by reacting, but by standing tall, you activate something ancient in her, a recognition that you are not like the rest. Now, this doesn't mean you become cold or play games. Stoicism isn't about emotional suppression, it's about emotional discipline. It's the ability to feel deeply but act wisely, to know your worth so completely that even when love withdraws, your self-respect remains untouched. Let me give you a truth that very few people will tell you. You don't win her back by proving anything. You win by not needing to. If she's meant to return, she will. And if not, then your silence protected you from someone who couldn't value what you offered. The man who can walk away, not out of pride but out of principle, is the man she never forgets. Because he didn't chase, he didn't beg, he didn't crumble. He became the standard by which she will measure every man after. So when her energy changes, when the texts slow down, when the warmth fades, don't fall apart. Rise inward, pull your power back, sit in the silence with calm. Breathe through the ache, and remember, every storm that comes to test you also comes to build you. Because the man who survives emotional withdrawal without losing himself doesn't just keep his dignity, he becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Not to her, but to anything that once made him feel small. That's stoicism, that's strength, and that's where your real power begins, not in her return, but in your ability to stand without needing it. Part 2. Breadcrumbing is a trap. Don't fall for it. It starts with something so small you almost miss it. A late night, "Hey, just thinking about you." A random emoji on your old photo. Or worse, a soft, "Hope you're doing okay," dropped like bait into your emotional ocean. Your heart jumps. Your chest tightens. You wonder, is this a sign she's coming back? But this isn't connection. It's not closure. It's breadcrumbing. A term in modern psychology used to describe a manipulation tactic where someone gives minimal attention just to keep you emotionally invested without ever offering real intimacy or resolution. It's the emotional equivalent of being starved and handed crumbs. And too many men take the crumbs and call it love. According to therapist and relationship expert Esther Perel, emotional inconsistency is one of the most addictive dynamics in romantic relationships. Why? Because the brain thrives on uncertainty. The dopamine system, the same one triggered by gambling, is activated not by what's guaranteed, but by what's unpredictable. When she disappears, your brain panics. When she reappears, your brain rewards you. It's a toxic loop, and one that can make even a breadcrumb feel like a feast. This is why ghosters can become heroes overnight. One vague text, and suddenly she's back in your heart. But here's the truth you must hold on to. A woman who truly regrets losing you won't breadcrumb. She'll show up, she'll apologize, she'll be consistent. Anything less is emotional entertainment, and you are not here to be someone's late-night curiosity. Think about what life coach and relationship strategist Matthew Hussey teaches. When someone reaches out but doesn't follow up with meaningful effort, you must protect your energy like it's currency, because it is. Every time you engage with inconsistency, you rob your future self of confidence and clarity. Most women breadcrumb not out of cruelty, but out of ego. They want to know they still have a place in your life. They want to check if they could still come back if they wanted to. And that check-in isn't about your growth or healing, it's about their control. The power dynamic flips back in their favor the moment you respond, the moment you open the door to maybe. But you are not a maybe. You are not a half thought. You are not a second-round option waiting to be picked. The man you're becoming? He doesn't react to empty gestures. He watches. He listens. He waits for substance. Because he knows the difference between attention and intention. Jordan Peterson, psychologist and author of 12 Rules for Life, talks about the necessity of boundaries as an act of self-respect. He says, if you're not capable of cruelty, you're absolutely a victim to anyone who is. That applies here. If you can't say no to someone offering you emotional crumbs, you're setting yourself up to be manipulated by them again and again. Let's break this down practically. She sends a "hope you're doing well" text. Your old self would melt. Reply instantly. Start imagining a reunion. But your evolved self, the Stoic one, takes a breath. You don't answer right away. You ask yourself, is this text a bridge or a breadcrumb? And if there's no follow-through, if there's no consistent change, you move on, quietly, powerfully. Your silence in response to breadcrumbs is not pettiness, it's self-protection. It says, I don't invest in mixed signals anymore. It tells the universe you're ready for wholeness, not hints. You're ready for love, not confusion. And when you live that truth, you stop attracting the inconsistent, the unavailable, the emotionally immature. It's not just about her, it's about who you're becoming. You're becoming the kind of man who doesn't chase illusions, who doesn't fall for patterns dressed as promises, who holds space for real connection and walks away from anything less. Yes, there might be moments of doubt, moments where you wonder if you were too harsh, too cold. But in those moments, remind yourself, your peace is worth more than her curiosity. Her message may have stirred something in you, but it doesn't have to direct you. Stoicism teaches detachment not from feelings, but from false hope. It gives you the power to look at an open message and say, not today. Not because you don't feel anything, but because you finally feel enough for yourself. So if she breadcrumbs, let her. Let her test the waters while you sail forward. Let her watch as you grow, evolve, and heal beyond her games, because one day she'll realize the door closed. Not with a bang, but with a quiet man who simply stopped replying. And that silence? That's your power, because you don't win this game by getting her back. You win by never lowering your standards to keep someone who let you go. Part 3. When you stay silent, she questions everything. Silence. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't post on social media. It doesn't send long messages, but it speaks. And when used wisely, it speaks louder than any outburst ever could. Especially to a woman who expected noise, reaction, validation, or pleading, and instead gets nothing. At first, she might feel relief. Your silence feels like surrender, like you've given up. She might even interpret it as weakness. But days pass, then weeks, and your absence doesn't fade, it deepens. Your energy doesn't chase, it withdraws. And in that vacuum, she begins to wonder, why hasn't he reached out? Has he moved on? Is he with someone else? Did I lose him for real this time? These questions echo louder than your old messages ever did, because while words can be ignored, silence forces introspection, especially from someone who is used to controlling the rhythm. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Your silence makes her face hers. When you don't react, you remove the emotional game board. Now there's nothing to play, only truth to face. And that truth terrifies people who depend on control. She might check your stories, revisit your photos, ask mutual friends about you. She's no longer certain you're there, and in that uncertainty, power begins to shift, not from revenge, but from restraint. The Stoics taught that true power is rooted in self-control, not in external domination. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That's exactly where you go when you choose silence, not out of spite, but out of peace. You retreat to the only place she can't follow, your inner stillness. Contrast that with what society tells men today. We're taught that silence means weakness, that we must always explain, express, justify. But some things, especially betrayal, disrespect, and repeated manipulation, deserve no explanation. They deserve a closed door. Look at high-performance individuals like Kobe Bryant. After public humiliation during his early career, he didn't argue with critics. He worked in silence. He trained harder. He built his legacy not through words, but through presence, results, and discipline. And years later, those who once doubted him spoke his name with reverence. Why? Because silence backed by action always earns respect. Now, let's apply that to you. When she expected you to beg, and you didn't. When she thought you'd text at midnight, and you didn't. When she assumed she still had emotional access to you but found an emotional wall instead, that's when she starts questioning everything, not because you played games, but because you stopped playing altogether. She's now sitting in the very silence she once gave you. But this time, it's different, because you didn't use silence to manipulate, you used it to evolve. And that's what separates boys from men. Boys seek noise. Men seek mastery. There's a biological truth here, too. Studies from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships show that emotional uncertainty triggers higher levels of obsession and rumination, especially in people who once had control in a dynamic. That means your silence doesn't just make her curious, it activates psychological discomfort, and that discomfort forces reflection. She'll wonder, was I wrong to hurt him? Did I take him for granted? Why do I miss him now that he's not chasing me? And here's the thing, she may never voice these questions, but she'll feel them deeply. And while she spirals in uncertainty, you're building, reading more, training more, elevating your standards. You're no longer seeking closure, you're becoming it. Because the man who finds peace in silence no longer needs validation to feel worthy. He doesn't perform strength, he embodies it. So what do you do when she breaks the silence? When she sends that, "Hey, how have you been?" message? You pause, you breathe. You ask yourself not, do I miss her, but does she deserve access to this new version of me? Because you're not who you were when she walked away. That version chased. This version chooses. That version reacted. This one reflects. And if she wants back in, she needs to rise. She needs to match the depth of your silence with the depth of her actions. Until then, you owe her nothing. Not even a reply. Not because you're cold, but because your warmth now has boundaries. And that, my brother, is the kind of silence that doesn't scream, but reshapes everything. Part 4. When she comes back. Don't rush to let her in. It always happens when your heart finally starts to feel whole again. Just when your peace becomes steady and your mind starts to breathe again, she returns. Maybe it's a simple, "Hey," or a nostalgic, "I've been thinking about you." The message is subtle, casual, but loaded with emotion. And suddenly, all the progress you made feels like it's standing on shaky ground. In that moment, you're flooded with memories. The nights you stayed up wondering, the mornings you woke up with her absence still heavy in the air. Now here she is, back. But why? And more importantly, should you open that door again? Here's the truth. Not every return is redemption. Not every "I miss you" comes from love. Sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's loneliness, and sometimes it's just boredom. This is where the Stoic inside you must rise, not to judge her, but to protect yourself. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, a psychologist specializing in narcissistic behavior, says this clearly. People often return not because they've changed, but because they're uncomfortable with the silence you created. Let that sink in. Your peace might be the very thing that unsettled her enough to reach out, not because she wants to build something better, but because she can no longer control the story. Don't confuse curiosity for commitment. She might wonder where you've been, who you're with, how you're doing, but unless her actions match her words, unless she returns with clarity, ownership, and a willingness to rebuild, then her presence is a distraction, not a blessing. This is the moment where most men break, not because they're weak, but because they still hope. They want to believe she's changed, that her return is a sign from the universe that maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, don't be overheard complaining, not even to yourself. Don't let your inner dialogue become a playground for fantasy. Look at the data. What's her track record? Did she grow in your absence? Or just grow uncomfortable? Is she acknowledging the hurt she caused or pretending it never happened? True return comes with responsibility, with healing, with apologies and changed behavior. Anything less is an emotional rerun of a show that already broke your heart once, and you don't have time to watch that again. Think about this like Kobe Bryant coming back from injury. He didn't just walk onto the court and expect respect. He earned it with sweat, with discipline, with a fire that said, "I'm not who I was before, I'm better." That's how someone should return to your life, with evidence, not just emotion. And what do you do in the meantime? You pause, you breathe, you observe. Your instinct might want to rush, reconnect, repair, reignite, but your wisdom says, wait, because patience is how you see clearly, and clarity is how you avoid pain disguised as possibility. Set the standard, not with arrogance, but with awareness. If she wants to come back, let her, but let her work for it. Let her show you with presence, with consistency, with honesty. And if she can't, you'll know it was never about love, it was about control. Remember this, you're no longer the man who needed her to feel enough. You've been through fire, you've grown in silence, you've found strength in stillness. The man she left is not the man she's returning to. That alone changes everything, because now she doesn't hold the power, you do. Not in a controlling way, but in a centered way. You have the power to say, not yet, or not again, or even, I've moved on. And whatever you choose, it will come from truth, not fear. So when she comes back, don't rush. Don't collapse, don't lower your standards in exchange for familiar affection. Make her rise, and if she does, you'll meet her with presence, and if she doesn't, you'll keep walking, calm, grounded, unshaken. Because at the end of the day, the woman who truly loves you doesn't just return, she rebuilds, and you deserve nothing less. Part 5. The Power of Emotional Detachment. Emotional detachment is misunderstood. People think it means you stop caring, that you become cold, robotic, heartless. But the truth is, emotional detachment is not about shutting off your heart. It's about learning how to protect it. It's about choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and strength over codependency. When a woman hurts you, especially if it's someone you loved deeply, the emotional impulse is to hold on, to overthink, to analyze, to stay emotionally tied to her energy even when she's no longer around. You replay conversations, you read into every post, you wonder if she thinks about you, if she regrets, if she misses you. But while you're mentally chasing closure, your life is on pause. That's where emotional detachment becomes essential, not as escape, but as survival. In Stoicism, Epictetus teaches, we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them. That's the core of detachment, not removing emotions, but removing the suffering we create by clinging to what no longer serves us. Emotional detachment gives you space to breathe, to see clearly, to act with reason instead of impulse. Let me be clear, this isn't about apathy, it's about power. It's the quiet power of a man who no longer lets outside behavior dictate his inner peace, who can love without losing himself, who can let go without self-destruction. That's real strength, not bravado, not numbness, but emotional sovereignty. Psychologist Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about neuroplasticity, how the brain rewires itself based on repeated thought and emotional patterns. If every day you relive her betrayal, you're hardwiring pain into your identity. But if you begin to detach, to redirect that emotional energy toward growth, reflection, and purpose, you literally rebuild yourself, not just emotionally, biologically. Detachment is the skill of staying grounded when everything around you tempts reaction. It's sitting in the storm without letting it inside your soul. When she posts something that feels directed at you, detachment says, I don't need to respond. When you hear a song that reminds you of her, detachment says, I can feel this and still move forward. It's not avoidance, it's mastery. And this mastery begins with one powerful belief: you are enough. Even without her acknowledgement, her apology, her presence, you no longer need her validation to feel worthy. That's what makes emotional detachment dangerous. To the manipulative, to the inconsistent, to anyone who once controlled you through your emotions. Because they realize they no longer have access, not to your attention. Think about someone like David Goggins. He faced rejection, pain, abandonment. But he didn't let it define his emotional identity. He used it, transformed it, became unstoppable not by avoiding emotion, but by mastering it. That's detachment in motion, choosing how you respond even when the world tries to provoke you. Now let's bring this home. You were hurt. That's real. That matters. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the grip, letting the past become part of your story, not your identity. Emotional detachment is choosing not to let the wound define how you love, how you trust, how you walk through life. So how do you begin detaching? Start with awareness. Notice where your mind goes when you're alone. Notice the moments she still lives in your thoughts, and gently bring yourself back to the present. Breathe through the craving for contact. Replace reaction with reflection. Journaling helps. Silence helps. Discipline helps. Then, create new associations. Don't let every reminder of her reopen the wound. Reclaim those spaces. If a place reminds you of her, revisit it with someone who brings you peace. If a song stings, play it while you train, while you grow, while you rise. Rewrite the meaning. Take your power back. Finally, remember, emotional detachment isn't something you achieve in a day. It's a practice, a commitment. Some days will feel strong, some will feel shaky. That's okay. What matters is that you keep choosing yourself over and over again. Because the man who becomes emotionally detached isn't the one who gave up. He's the one who finally stopped giving away his power. And that man, he doesn't chase. He doesn't beg. He doesn't collapse. He builds, he leads, he becomes. And in that silence, that calm, that unshakable presence, he finds something greater than closure. He finds himself. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If you're still here, it means something inside you is shifting. You're not just listening, you're rising, choosing peace, choosing clarity, choosing yourself. At the Chill Stoic, we don't chase validation. We don't beg to be seen. We build from within. And if this message gave you strength, share it. Let it reach another soul who's been hurting in silence. You're not alone. You're not broken. You're rebuilding. And that's the most powerful thing a man can do. Until next time, stay still, stay strong, and never forget your worth.